This is one of the most actionable episodes I've ever recorded. If you care about your freedom, you have to care about your privacy. And today's guest, Glenn Meter, is one of the foremost experts in helping people secure online privacy. You might want to get a notepad. There's a lot of links and there's a lot of actionable tips. So I really hope you find this episode as useful as I did. My name is Henry Bingaman. This is Getting Out of the Machine. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Today is we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is privacy. Now, I think in the real world, most of us have a expectation of privacy that's different from the online world. In the real world, when you're in your house, you assume you have a certain level of privacy. And then when you go out, you get to determine how you present yourself to the world, what you wear, what you say. But in the online world, it's right now, if you're not taking a lot of steps, you just don't know who's watching and what they're seeing. And you can't really hide any of your personality, any of your thoughts. And especially for people like a lot of the people that listen to this podcast that have some politically unpopular opinions, that can end up being a real problem. We've seen now the FBI colluding with social media companies and all that. So you really have to be careful these days. So today I'm bringing on an expert in online privacy, and that is Glenn Meter. Glenn, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Henry. It's an honor to be here.
So can you give people a little bit about your background just to so they can understand how you became an expert in online privacy?
Yeah, sure. I have a newsletter that I write. I've been doing that for about 12 years, and I've written a number of privacy articles over the years, and I did videos and webinars and all that stuff. And what I noticed is privacy wasn't my primary focus. I was primarily talking freedom and that type of thing, but I would throw in some privacy articles there, and those were quite popular articles. But what I noticed over the time is people just weren't doing the things that I said to do, and I would say very clearly, this is how you do it, and people just weren't doing it. So I really dug into that, and I wanted to know. I did some polls and surveys, and I got on to some Zoom meetings with some of my top fans, and I asked them, why aren't you doing this stuff? And the answer came back that it's overwhelming. The topic is overwhelming. There's so much to know, and the more you get into it, it's like it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so that's why I formed my company, Privacy Action Plan. And it's a course and community, but we kind of break everything down into bite-sized pieces. And I find that's kind of the best solution for getting over the overwhelm factor. And so once I identified the problem, I was able to come up with a solution. And I guess that's not really the question you asked. You asked how I get into it. I guess I didn't have any formal training. It's just one of those things that I really love. I'm very fascinated with this. And over the past, I'd say 7 years or 10 years, I've been, just studying on my own, and I've picked up a lot of stuff. So, and it also has to do with my love of freedom. I believe that privacy is required for freedom. If we don't have freedom, I don't think we can really have privacy. I mean, if we don't have privacy, we can't really have freedom.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. When somebody's watching you all the time, it actually changes your behavior. It's why there was the whole panopticon experiment was considered abusive, because if you're always being watched, there's just a level of scrutiny that goes with that that's intolerable to humans most of the time. And I think the reason it doesn't feel so bad online is because we don't know it. We don't see it. It doesn't we don't recognize the impact in our own life, because most of the time, it comes to nothing. Most of us are just going about our lives, and we don't care that the government has our entire search history. It just because it hasn't affected us yet. The problem is they're moving more and more on the authoritarian spectrum. So it seems like it's going to get more and more important as we go on. But before we get to the privacy action plan, which I do want to talk about a bit,
sure.
Let's just lay some foundation. So who is actually watching us online? Because it's not just the government that's doing these things. Can you kind of talk about why it's important to have privacy and who the privacy is from?
Yeah, so I look at it as there's 3 threat vectors, I guess. One is scammers and hackers, which is one of the most dangerous ones that we have to look out for. But then we have big tech and Big Brother. And those three threats there are something we really have to be concerned about. And Big Brother and Big Tech definitely work together. I mean, we've seen more and more and more of that, but it is obvious that Google has been shaping the whole NSA and how the NSA collects data. And it's really scary. I mean, if you think about, like, okay, what if the founding fathers lived in a day and age where we had this level of surveillance? I mean, they would have never been able to do what they did. They would have been hunted down. They would have killed them before we even knew who George Washington was or Thomas Jefferson. We would never know who they are because they would have hunted them down. They didn't have any scruples back then. They didn't have any. They didn't pretend that they were living in a democracy. So we wouldn't have had the U.S. if we didn't have, if they had the level of surveillance that the government does now.
Yeah, and the government still kind of disappears people, but it's just, well, I don't know, is it the government working with big tech? So there's always the question is how much in bed is Google with the NSA, CIA, all of that? Because it seems like anybody that's inconvenient for the government gets disappeared offline, or anybody that I guess that goes against the whole cathedral narrative, for lack of a better term. So it started with the Alex Jones thing, and then it, Milo Yiannopoulos, and neither of these are people that I particularly admire, but the precedent is being set. And now Andrew Tate is the latest one who's, I don't know a lot about him, but he blew up real big and then disappeared just as quickly. So how much is the government, I guess, is there any way of knowing how much the government is dictating who gets canceled and who doesn't?
Well, I'll throw out another example there, and that is all of the virus, the other people, the scientists and doctors that got censored too. There were thousands of them that got censored.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't just those big name people. But to answer your question, I don't know if it's exactly, I don't know if we can really know, but we can kind of observe this. And there are, I mean, we know that the CIA funded and the NSA funded Google to begin with. I mean, that's a proven thing. There were grants, research grants that they had for surveillance, and Google won those grants.
Wow.
But the other thing that I think of a lot is the Chinese social credit system, which is going on right now in China. And I don't know if you've talked about this a lot to your audience, and I think that you probably know it, and the audience probably knows it. But this is real. It's going on right now. It is technological slavery, and Google is right at the heart of it. They have worked closely with the Chinese government. They don't care. They do not care about people and the individual people. And I don't really consider Google to be any better than government, and anyone that seeks power. They all work together, and they're putting this network in place that we just don't even have an idea of how powerful this network is. So I think it's scary. I think there is very clear evidence that they're working together, and I think it's at a very high level they're working together.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a divide. I don't know if this is right or not, but it seems like there's a divide of pro-human and anti-human in some ways. And I consider, if you're trying to suppress freedom, I consider that anti-human, because then you're just looking for slaves. And then there's the liberty side of the spectrum, which is very pro-human. We all believe, I'm assuming we all believe that liberty is the way to reach human flourishing at the maximized potential. And so all these big, powerful companies seem to be working together in a very anti-human way that's kind of getting disturbing.
It's not kind of, it is totally disturbing.
Yeah.
And what's disturbing to me more than that is the hordes of people that follow along with everything that they tell you to do and they tell you to believe. And these people do not question it at all. They don't question the narrative. They don't question the evidence in front of them. They don't reassess their views based on the truth coming out. I mean, I think that's the scariest thing, actually.
Yeah, it is for sure. That people seem to be just lemmings walking off a cliff to their own demise in a lot of ways. All right, I want to so I was going to break it down into three, but the more I think about it, I want to break it into two. So we have what can we what are the risks from hackers and scammers? And then I was going to do big tech and government the way you laid it out, but I'm kind of seeing those as the same thing at this point.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's
yeah.
just kind of do it as two. What are the biggest risks online right now from like the hackers and scammers category?
Well, okay, so let me give you an example of a very sophisticated scam that's going around right now. And before I get into this, let me point out that scammers and hackers, scammers are more the con artists, hackers are more the computer people. So scammers are the ones that get you on the phone, and they're very good at what they do. And it's important to understand that hackers and scammers are part of organized crime right now. So this isn't just somebody sitting in their basement, doing whatever. This is extremely sophisticated. And I'll give you an example of that right now. So there's an article that came out recently of this guy in Denver who got scammed for 1.6 million. And this is every single cent that he owns in the world. So the way it works is he met this lady on some dating site, let's say match.com or something like that, right? And so they start chatting back and forth, and they chatted for like a couple months before he never even met her. They were just chatting for months online, and he thought there was like some really strong connection there, and they were really good for each other, and he was falling for her and everything. So somewhere during this conversation, she told him, she just said, "Hey, do you do anything with crypto?" And he said, "Well, I kind of mess around with it. I put, I have $10,000 or something, just whatever. I put $10,000 into crypto, and it hasn't done anything." And she said, "Well, you might want to try this app. I tried it and it's awesome, and I'm getting tremendous returns." And then, they use bots to do this and whatever. So she explains it. But it's not like she's pushing him in to do it. She's just saying, this is what I did. I have fantastic results with it. So he tried it. So he put $5,000 into it. And within 2 weeks, he got like $1,500 profit from that $5,000. So he says, wow, this is awesome, right? So then he withdrew his money. So he got all of his 5,000 out and the $1,500, said $6,500 in his hand, right? So then he says, well, this is pretty awesome. And by the way, this guy was a software engineer. So he
no
knew
dummy.
he knew his stuff. He looked at the app. He says, this is a very well-designed app. And so he put more money in, and he put more money in, and he put more money in. And then the ticker on the screen is showing him how much. So let's say he puts $50,000 in, and that 50,000 is now worth $85,000 within like a few months. So he's putting more and more money in and says, wow, this is amazing. And so eventually he puts in all 1.6 million, which is everything he owns in the world. And the screen is showing him he's got $8 million in the account. And then he tries to pull something out, and the lady that he's chatting with disappears. The app says, nope, you can't take it out. And he realized, oh my God, I was just scammed out of every single cent that I own. And the key with this is the amazing thing about this is that they were able to do this without raising any red flags. Because, if she asked for money, right, and she wanted him to send her money, then there'd be some red flags there and whatever. But she just kind of talked about this app as kind of a side thing. And then they started chatting about it. When he put some money in, they started chatting about it. Oh, wow, this is great. Yeah, I'm doing great too. And so she starts reinforcing it. But then, then the scam falls, and he realizes he's out all this money. And then there was something. So I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I keep track of what scams are in the paper that people fall for the scams. There was a family in Lincoln that lost, this was just last month, actually. They lost $700,000 in the same scam. And so what happened with them is one of the people in the family got on this dating app, and then they started putting money into the app, and wow, this is amazing. The return I'm getting is amazing. So he then convinced the other people in his family to put the money in, and they all of a sudden the whole family lost $700,000, which is everything they own. And these people are good at what they do, very good. They have no remorse. They will steal every single cent that you have, and they will move on, and you will not be able to get any of it back. And like I said, this is a scam that doesn't raise any red flags. So you just have to know, you have to be careful, you have to be skeptical, you have to know some core privacy and security things, because this doesn't you can't say you trust your instincts, right? Because there was no instincts that caught this. But you have to just trust, you have to develop your skepticism even more, to a much higher degree. And really, and I guess the only thing that you really need to do is, in this case, is if it's too good to be true, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Do not fall for it. Do not get greedy. Crypto is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not easy to make a lot of money in it, and don't let anyone tell you it is, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, there's ways of checking that you're actually using a mainstream, reputable investment, a crypto account type thing. Like, just stick with the main ones, and then get all your crypto out of there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the main lesson in crypto, is you don't want anybody else to own your money. But that's just a classic long con that's super enhanced by technology, because these
Yeah.
people that are doing it are typically in Russia or Eastern Europe somewhere, where I think I read one time, now this was a few years ago, but 99% plus of cybercrime never goes solved. It's not even
Yeah.
worth investigating for most of the authorities. Like, you could report that to the FBI, and they'll say, yeah, tough luck. I mean, there's just
And
not much.
most people don't report it either, because they get ashamed by it. They feel embarrassed and ashamed. And within Lincoln, just the past couple months, there are countless stories of this person lost $100,000. This person lost $210,000. And I mean, I guess that's the point I have to make here, is these guys are good. They're really good. So you have to be quite careful with this stuff.
So what are I guess, some of the bigger red flags that you see? So there's a lot of really common scams. Like on Instagram, I get DM'd all the time by somebody that pretending to be Elon Musk or some other
Yeah.
influencer saying, hey, are you into crypto? And, those are easy to just block and report. But there's a lot more subtle scams that take, it's typically the scams that are the most effective are over a longer time frame, right? It's like you said with
Yeah.
the lady building months and months, and that sounds like it took a year or so for him to lose all 1.6 million, which, by the way, is insane. You never put all, like, just from an investment standpoint, no matter what you do, you don't put $1 million or your entire net worth into something. But what are some of the bigger red flags that you can start looking out for?
Yeah, so let me just say on that one, that scam I was telling you about, that's called the pig butchered scam. Pig butchering scam, because they're fattening up the pig before the slaughter, which means that they develop this it's a long-term thing where they scam people over long term. One of the big things is phishing. I mean, phishing is still probably the number one way that people get scammed. And so this is when you get an email from PayPal or from your bank or something like that, and it says to you've or something from Amazon. They'll say, hey, thanks for such and such purchase of this of $800 Xbox going to somewhere in Tennessee, and if there's any problems with this, please
Yeah,
call so and so.
I get that
And
via
so
text message like twice a week now.
yeah,
It's getting nuts.
yeah. And it happened, you get these because it works. And so there's either two ways that those work. So if you get a phishing message, you might get a link to PayPal. And so you go on to PayPal, and you click on the button, it takes you to PayPal, and it looks exactly like PayPal, right? And so you enter your password and your username and password, and then it will say something like, oh, well, site's temporarily down, please come back. Or it might even ask you for a two-factor authentication, which if you give it, then you're giving them immediate access to your account. And so that's a fake account. It's a fake PayPal site. And the best way to protect against that is, first of all, you have to be observant and skeptical of everything you get by email. But also you have to have a password manager, because the password manager If you go to a site and says PayPal, and you have a password manager that autofills those fields, the password manager knows that that's not PayPal. And
Right.
so you have to, so it won't let you fill those fields in. And some people would get frustrated with this, and then they would just go into the password manager and then manually put the enter the thing in there. But you've got to step back for a minute and say, no, actually my password manager might be protecting me from something here. The other way that those phishing things go is they give you a phone number to call, and then once you get on the call, they have professional, the scammers that are very good, and they will keep the pressure on, and they will pressure you. And as soon as they pressure you, you can't think right. And that's how, and that's why they keep the pressure on. They won't let you hang up. They will keep the pressure on until you do, such and such. So those are the two ways. So I guess in that response is, don't call phone numbers on emails. Don't click on links, or be very careful clicking on links and emails. Instead, go to the website. Just type PayPal in to your browser and go to it directly. And if there's a phone number, don't call it. Instead, go to the website, look up a phone number. And it's hard sometimes because some of these places don't want to give you a phone number. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. But the other thing is, if you're under pressure, if they're trying to pressure you in any way, you have to kind of detach from the situation emotionally and hang up. You've got to get out of that. You've got to stop the pressure system that they put on you. And
Yeah, I think you have to recognize what's going on. That and
yeah,
most of the time, there's the social convention is to be polite to people. You don't
yeah,
want to be rude. That's just not, you wouldn't, if somebody walks up to you on the street, that seems friendly and you're in a nice area of town, you're not gonna just spit in their face and walk away, right? But that's kind of what you have to do in these situations. And I mean, it's not the real world. It's people don't, I don't know. There's homeless people that are doing these scams too now that are just putting pressure on you. But I mean,
yeah,
you have to look at everybody as if they could be hostile unless you personally know them. It's
exactly.
Yeah, it's just a dangerous world online, and you don't know who you're talking to. It's not
Yeah,
a polite social setting. So I think if you can get in the mindset that this is not a polite social setting, that you'll be a lot better off in the long run.
yeah, yeah. And people get scammed all the time. And I would also say that if you get scammed, your chance of getting scammed within the week is much higher, because as soon as you get scammed, you get put on a database of, okay, this person is capable of being scammed. So you become a much higher target for them, and scammers will sell that data, or they'll try to scam you again themselves, or they'll sell it to other scammers, and they make money selling your database and all of that stuff.
Is this what's going on in the dark web? Because I went down a dark web rabbit
Exactly.
hole a couple of years ago, and it was actually pretty terrifying what you could find
Yeah.
on there. And they're selling bulk credit card numbers and stuff like that. So actually, in your talk at the Tom Woods event, you talked about a way to basically never get scammed with credit cards online. There was a tool you talked about. I forget the name of it. Actually, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So uh one of the main things, let me step back for a minute and say, you hear about all these breaches that happen all the time, right? Like Marriott gets hacked, um Experian gets hacked, Facebook gets hacked, all of these
Target
places
lost a
get,
billion names at credit cards at something like that at one
yeah,
point.
Sony, all of these places, they get hacked, right? So why do they do this? Why do they keep hacking different places? They hack different places because those then go for sale on the dark web. And then these hackers will buy all these different databases and compile them, and they will make a profile or a database about you. And so they want as much information about you as possible. Then they will look for patterns, weaknesses, all of that stuff. And so, if you're using a weak password on all your different sites, or the same password, or maybe you're using the same whatever, they'll look for these weaknesses that will say, okay, this person doesn't know what he's doing. So one of what I talked about at the Tom Woods event was you have to prevent them from being able to build this database on you. So for example, if you go to, well, I give this example. Let's say we sign up for Netflix, right? So if you go to Netflix, they want your email address first, right? So every site wants your email address. Don't give them your real email address. So first of all, you have to sign up for anonymity, which is a place that you can get burner email addresses, and you can get an infinite number of burner addresses, and they work. So they just forward to your email address.
Can you spell how's anonymity spelled?
It's a terrible name. ANONADDY.com.
Okay.
And so that's how you get a burner email address. Then the next thing is you need to make a password. Okay, so you need to make a long, complex password for every site that you go to. So you need a password manager that will generate a long, complex password for you and remember it. And so I recommend Bitwarden for that. Okay. And it's kind of complicated to get into a private password manager. So, you know, if you can do it on your own, that's fine. If not, then you might want to, you know, there's some different tools to learn how to do that. But then the third part here is they ask for your credit card. And the problem with your credit card is, first of all, if somebody breaches that site, they're going to get your credit card, but they also will get your real name and address, because the credit card is not going to approve your transaction unless you give your real name and real address, right? But there's a service out there called privacy.com, and this allows you to create virtual cards for every site that you go to. And so you can sign up. So it's just like a burner email address. So you're going to use a different email address on every site. You're also going to use a different credit card for every site that you go to. And when you create a burner credit card number on Netflix, or on privacy.com for Netflix, the first place that you use that credit card on is the only site you'll ever be able to use that site on. So if somebody steals that credit card, they're not going to be able to use it anywhere, because that number doesn't work anywhere else. But the other thing that's great about privacy.com is you can use your fake name, your fake address. So you can say, okay, I'm John Smith, and my zip code is 234234 or whatever, you know, and the credit card's still going to approve that transaction. The other great thing about privacy.com is you can say, okay, now Netflix, I approve only $15 a month to be charged by Netflix, and they won't be able to charge anything in addition to that. So if we just step back and let's look at this here. So if, let's say, Netflix gets breached, they don't know who you are. Netflix has no idea who you are. And neither do the hackers. Your email address isn't connected to any other email address. Your password is unique and long. It's not the same as anything else that's out there. Your credit card is unique, can't be used anywhere else. Your name that is on the credit card and the address is fake. So they don't get any information about you. And these people that are building the database, they don't have any information on you. And you do this on every site that you go to. You never use your real email address if you're going to sign up for a newsletter or a website, webinar, or anything like that. If you're going to buy candles from some candle site that you don't know, you use this strategy, and it really shrinks the size of your footprint on there, and you don't become a target that way.
Yeah. It's every little step you take makes you harder to attack for hackers. So I worked with a guy a couple years ago. He just had a cybersecurity newsletter type thing, and he used to work for the NSA. And so there's a difference between hackers and the government in this respect, that if you put up just a little resistance for the cyber criminal type people, the hackers and scammers, they just move on to the next easier target. There's a million fish in the sea. So every single little step you take just makes it less and less likely that they're going to come after you. So doing one, I mean, I think the password manager is critical. I love the email thing, but even if you just take those two steps, you're a lot safer from the scammers and hackers. But then the
Yeah.
credit card takes it to a whole new level, which is great. You know,
Yeah.
it was interesting. You were talking about how the hackers, scammers are making databases, which
Yeah.
is, as a marketer working with a lot of these digital marketing companies who, I have clients that spend 20 million, $30 million a month on Facebook and Google ads. Basically, Google and Facebook are doing the exact same thing. They're
Yeah.
accumulating all this data about your behavior online, and then they're selling it to marketing companies to be able to target you. So it's interesting how that whole system works together. And it was because back in like 2008, we didn't have any of that database type targeting technology. And, marketers made just as much money then as they do now. So it's not actually necessary. It's just an invasion of privacy by these big
Yeah.
companies. So let's
I
kind of
look at I look at all three of those, hackers and scammers, big tech and big brother. I think they're all the same. It's just that they're at different degrees of sophistication.
and with a little bit of different intention, right?
Yeah.
The big brothers trying to take your freedom, big tech and scammers are trying to take your money in different ways.
Yeah. And influence you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's none of them are out for your own good, for your benefit.
So I want to switch to Google actually, and I view Google as like the fourth branch of government at this point. Um, so everybody has some concerns about Google, like, oh, they might be like snooping on my email, they're tracking me around the world. The ads they show me when I just talked about like baby formula, and all of a sudden I'm getting baby carriages, all this stuff ads. But I think people don't exactly understand the scope of what Google is doing. Can you kind of dive into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Google is evil. You remember they used to have the slogan "Don't be evil."
They
They just got rid of the
conspicuously
"Don't
dropped it.
be."
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Eric Schmidt is the ex-CEO of Google, and he had a famous quote. He said, "Well, if you're doing something that other people shouldn't know, maybe you shouldn't be doing that in the first place." In other words, they don't have any concept of respecting your privacy. They don't believe that you have the right to privacy. But so let's look at Google. So they have 91% of the searches around the world globally are either in google.com or YouTube. 65% of browsers that are out there are Chrome. 71% of phones, are Android. All of these products, and then it goes on and on, email, Google Analytics, all of that stuff. The key is to understand that all of these products are not designed for the purpose that you think they're designed for. They don't design Android phone with the purpose of providing you with a great product and selling you that great product. They design all their products for one specific purpose, and that is to steal your data. Everything that you use, Chrome, the Chrome browser, the Android phone, all of that is to steal your data and to track you and to record you and monitor you. And it's very hard to get away from their net, actually. So, we talk about a VPN. A VPN is very important that you have, and I don't know if I want to go into. That's a tangent. I don't want to really go out on, but
Just for people listening, VPN stands for virtual private network. It basically has a million nodes around the world, so nobody can tell exactly where you logged on from and what you are doing specifically. But
yeah, so it encrypts your traffic, and and so you get online from all kinds of different servers around the world, and no one knows that this is particularly you, except for Google. Because if you have a Google account, let's say Gmail or YouTube, and you have that open while you are surfing the web, it doesn't matter if you have a VPN. If you're signed into your Google account and you go to a website that has Google Analytics on it, Google knows where you're going. They know everywhere you're going. So the reason they put Google Analytics out there is not for the purpose that most people think. It's to track you. That is another tool that they have to track you. And so anyway, I mean, the net is very deep with them. You can't trust them. Google, I think almost 30% of the world uses Gmail. And Google looks through your inbox, and the employees at Google can look through your inbox, but also they let hundreds of other companies look through your inbox and this is something that you think is private, or semi-private at least, is, this is your stuff and most people don't think about it. I try to do everything I can, and I recommend that my students do everything they can to get away from Google. It's very important to do that.
I've seen a lot of, so, I have an email list. I collect email names and send out newsletters. I've seen a lot of people on Proton Mail. It's becoming a much bigger thing. I think it's because I have a largely liberty focused group.
Yeah.
But I mean, is Proton Mail the best one out there? Are there better options? Are there
Proton Mail is probably the biggest privacy centric email that there is, and it's good. You can also do Tutnota. You can do private mail. There's other solutions coming out, and I guess this is the good news, is that the market is responding to this demand for privacy, and there are a lot of solutions coming out that are privacy centric. It's still a very tiny percent of the whole market, but the market is responding, definitely.
So I guess, how much is Google in bed with the government? I mean, we've established that they were, funded by an NSA grant at the beginning, but you said anybody can look at your email. So I assume that means, Google's not going to put up a lot of resistance if the government says, hey, I need to see, Henry's entire email history going back 9 years or whatever, however long I had that Gmail account.
No, there's different layers of government too, right? So you've got local governments, and they work with local governments too. But I think on the high level, on the NSA side, the CIA side, I don't think there's much of a difference between Google and the NSA. They have everything, but for example, Edward Snowden revealed that, and this was back in 2013, that the NSA could turn your camera on your phone anytime they wanted to, or your camera on your computer on anytime they wanted to, without the little light coming on and all of that stuff. And they could listen to you, all of that stuff. But that's where I get into, there are de-Googled Android phones, and those are very privacy centric. And again, this is where the market is responding. So you can take a Google phone and then load a different operating system onto it, like Calyx or Graphene OS. And then, they can't turn on your phone. They can't turn on your camera. They can't listen to you, because the security researchers have gone through every piece of code on that phone, and they've stripped out anything that Google has control over, and they've made it hardened with privacy centric stuff. And so I think it's important to do that.
Now, can you ruin your own privacy by getting one of those de-Googled phones and then installing the wrong apps?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you do that and then download a Google app, then you've kind of destroyed it. But there's other apps too actually, that's a good point, because I recommend people think about apps on their phone as being malware. It is really very, very invasive. And it's not like a website. So let's say you have a Facebook app on your phone, right? It's not the same thing as just going to a Facebook web page and doing that, because a web page is just a web page. It's not a program. So the app on your phone is a program that has quite a bit of power to do what it wants to do with the different things on your phone. And so, I would consider most apps to be malware, and you have to be very careful what you download onto your phone.
Yeah, TikTok's the prime example right now, right?
Yeah.
I have a business coach, and he's been encouraging me to get on TikTok because he has all these videos that go viral and get 50,000 views in a couple days. And it really can drive business to you. But from what I understand, TikTok can log all of your keystrokes, even when the app's not open. And that's just a Chinese spyware app at this point.
Yeah. And it's not just TikTok. I mean, Apple gives I mean, we've been primarily talking about Google, but Apple gives us developers the ability to take screenshots of your phone whenever they want to without your knowledge.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Apple
that's terrifying.
Apple bills itself as the privacy company, right? They're the ones that stood up to the FBI and wouldn't open
Yeah.
somebody's phone. So but that's not exactly right, is what you're saying. They seem to be a little more invasive.
Well, yeah. I mean, what it comes down to is at least Google is open source code so that we can see what's going on behind the scenes, whereas Apple's operating system is closed. So we have no idea really what they're doing. I mean, they bill it as privacy oriented, and I used to believe that, but I don't believe that anymore. I don't trust Apple. I don't think that they have our best interests at heart. I think they're just another big tech company, and they're doing the privacy thing as a marketing, a marketing tool, but we have no idea what they're actually doing on their devices.
So like I've been using Signal more and more with some friends and family, but I do have an iPhone. So does it matter if I'm using Signal if they can sit there screenshotting it every conversation I'm having?
Yeah, I mean, you can do what you can do, and I would recommend that you do get Signal and do use Signal. But what layer of protection are you actually getting on an iPhone? It's hard to know. We can't really know because it's closed source, and they're not going to tell us. So yeah, I mean, do what you can do. Definitely get rid of like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, those type of things, because I can guarantee you those things are tracking you. Those things are recording you. And so, yeah, get rid of those.
So how do you think about the balance between, privacy and having a normal functioning life where, I'm out in the dating market right now. Some girl's not going to want to use Signal maybe to
Right.
have a
Right.
conversation. So like, how do you balance having a life and being, secure?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that everyone has to come to the decision on their self. But I can tell you, on one extreme, if you go super like privacy oriented, it's an endless rabbit hole you can go down. I mean, people, if they really want to get invisible from everything, I mean, you're talking almost a full-time job just trying to, and you're so paranoid at that point. You don't want to go there, but you don't want to go that far on the other end where you just don't care either. You want to find that happy medium, get rid of Google, get rid of big tech, um, and do the steps that you can take to be private and still live a good life. I have this de-Googled phone, for example. It's a Calyx operating system. I can do pretty much everything that I mean, there are a couple things that I sacrifice. They haven't figured out. So Calyx hasn't figured out like the voice to text feature, which sucks because I used to love, you know, the voice to text. I would never text. I would never type any text. I just speak it and then would type it out. And I loved that. And that's something that I've sacrificed with this. But like Google Maps, there's an app called Magic Earth that is fantastic, and it's totally private, doesn't track everywhere you go and who you see and all of that stuff. And so I think there's a happy medium that you can find that respects your privacy, protects your freedom, protects you from hackers and scammers, and doesn't take you too far down the rabbit hole that you're going to go crazy with paranoia.
Yeah, it's interesting how hard it is sometimes to take the first steps. So, for example, I got my first MacBook in 2007, right after I got out of college, and then shortly after I got an iPhone, and then I have
Yeah.
Apple iCloud backup, and this has been however long, 15 years at this point that I've been using all of these Apple products, and it's so hard to start disentangling. And I've been taking little steps here and there, but making that big jump is kind of it's scary in a few ways, especially because I've run my businesses on Google and Apple products now
Yeah.
for the entire thing. So all of my clients have my old Gmail address. Now I do have
Yeah.
Proton Mail at this point but it's starting to build up from scratch is just difficult. So I guess, do you think about privacy differently from like, would it make sense for me to keep all those accounts and computers for business and then have my own, when I'm doing my own Googling and personal email, have a whole separate computer that's
Yeah,
de-Googled and de-Appled?
absolutely. I think that's what we call compartmentalization, and that is the best way to do it. I mean, if you have to use these different tools for your business, okay, do that on a Mac, whatever, but only do business stuff on that. Don't do other things. So have a computer just for your personal life. And I would recommend System 76, which is a Linux computer. But Linux is really, Linux has always been kind of the realm of, excuse me, kind of computer geek
Yeah.
area. But they have really kind of fine-tuned Linux now so that it's super easy to use for the average person. And I would recommend that you look at System 76 systems. And I have a System 76 system. I love it. And I've always been on Mac, but I love System 76. So but even let's say you can't afford two computers, then what you want to do is you want to compartmentalize on one computer. So let's say you're going to still do some Facebook and Google stuff on your computer. Well, only do that from one browser. So let's say you do that from Brave, your Brave browser, and then you use Firefox for all your other stuff, and you never log into Google, you never log into YouTube or anything like that from your Firefox browser.
So would that be the order? Because I actually do the exact opposite. I have all my Google stuff in Firefox and then all the personal stuff in Brave.
You can do it that way. I think I would recommend the other way just because Brave is basically a de-Googled Chrome browser. And so it kind of works with Chrome, with Google better. But it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do it the way that you're doing is fine. Whatever works for you works. Yeah.
So can we talk about Brave a little bit? It seems to be anybody that has serious concerns about privacy seems to be pushing Brave right now. You said it's de-Googled. Is it effectively de-Googled or is it like surface level de-Googled?
No, they do a good job of de-Googling it. So I told you earlier about the Android operating system is open source, right? And so that allows people to create these de-Googled Android phones. And that's basically what Chrome Brave is doing with the Chrome browser. So the Chrome is open source also. So Brave, the researchers or the developers can look through every inch of code and just strip out anything that is communicating with Google, and they can strip that out, and then they can put some other privacy features in there. And so it's a good browser. I like Firefox and Brave. Firefox, you just don't use this out of the box settings. Just go in and there's some settings that you need to change in Firefox to make it a little bit more secure.
One last company I want to bring up is Microsoft. They're kind of one of the other big companies. Just by default, I use Microsoft Word. I've used it since I was a freshman in college. How is Microsoft on privacy? I know they made me switch from where I bought the program and just owned it to a subscription a few years ago. So, and I think it backs up to their cloud at this point. So how private are my actual Microsoft documents?
No, I mean, I don't trust Microsoft at all. Microsoft they're really locking it down and trying to steal a lot of data. I mean, so they've got Bing, they've got all of this stuff. They're just as bad as Google. I don't consider them any better than Google, except that Google's better at stealing your data than Microsoft is. But Microsoft has the advantage of having the operating system on your computer. So they have access to all of that stuff. I mean, this is Bill Gates created this stuff. From the beginning, Microsoft was working with the government on this. I remember back in the 90s hearing stories of NSA backdoors into Microsoft products and stuff like that. So I don't trust Microsoft at all. And
So
there's great alternatives too. Like for Word, you can, or for Office, you can do only Office. Only Office is great. And then for people that are more used to a Google environment like Google Docs, there's a new product called Skiff, and Skiff is specifically designed for, privacy, a privacy oriented version of Google Docs.
yeah, that's I'll check those out. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think I understand just from this conversation. We've mentioned, I don't know, a dozen alternatives and what not to do and what to do, which is why you started your privacy action plan. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you structured that? Because you have a ton of amazing testimonials. People really love the product. So can you
Yeah.
kind of talk about how the product works, how privacy action plan works?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of places that people can go to learn about online privacy, but my experience is that they're not very good at speaking to the average person. All those YouTube channels, they don't speak to the average person. But the other thing is that it is just overwhelming for people. And so we have taken the angle or the approach of how can we make it easy for people and not overwhelming. And so that's why what we primarily do is give people bite-sized pieces. So instead of focusing on the big picture, which is overwhelming, we're going to send you this little thing to do right now, and then later in the week we'll send you this little thing to do, and then just take you through it step by step, and before you know it, you're quite advanced with your privacy. And but the key is that you don't focus on the big picture. So we have a course, that's what the course is, but then we have an online community too. We're about 4,000 members strong right now. We have a number of privacy experts that work within the company, and so people can do individual consultations if they want to. We have emergency consultations for our members if they want to. We have
I'm just curious, what kind of things do you cover in emergency consultations? Like, what would be an
well,
example?
so we created the one-on-one consultations first, and that's for anyone that has any specific questions that they want to go through. But then we added the emergency consultations in case somebody feels like they're being scammed or they're in the middle of something that they really feel uncomfortable with, and time is of the essence. Then we want to give people a resource that they can reach out and get some emergency help right now. And so that's something that we offer to our members. And then we have Q&A webinars, live Q&A webinars for our members also, where we just get on and they ask us whatever questions they want to ask us, and it's usually me and another one of our privacy experts get on there and just answer people's questions, and people love it. I'm very proud of what we have, and so yeah.
So how many other people work in as privacy experts in the company with you?
I think uh three we've got three or four, I can't remember right now,
And do you all
but
kind
three or
of,
four others.
so I guess, how do you keep up with all the latest scams and different technology and tools? What are you doing to, I mean, there's so much new stuff that comes out, it seems like.
Well, I follow a lot of security researchers out there, and it's just a topic that interests me. So I like learning about this stuff, and I just follow a bunch of people that are always talking about this stuff and keep up on the latest things.
Yeah,
And we try to keep the course updated. Like we used to recommend DuckDuckGo. We don't recommend DuckDuckGo anymore because DuckDuckGo, I think, betrayed. I mean, very clearly, they betrayed their customers' trust because they started off where they started censoring results, which is anti-freedom as far as I'm concerned. But then it came out that they were actually tracking people all along. When they were saying they weren't tracking people, they were tracking people, and they were allowing Microsoft to track people on the DuckDuckGo network. So, I mean, it's a very clear and blatant betrayal of trust. And so I don't want anything to do with those guys anymore.
Yeah, I got worried. So I was just in the Austin airport a couple days ago, and I saw a giant DuckDuckGo like advertisement banner. And anytime you have enough money to start advertising in essentially government buildings, it starts getting weird. Like there's something up with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that wasn't a huge red flag for me, because I know there is a market for privacy, and they wanted to be first in the market, and they wanted to establish themselves as the first in the market, and they got some big investors, I think. But how can you have that as your mission and then betray people's trust like that? I don't understand.
Well, it's also, you have to think of when you're censoring search results, it's like Google doesn't just censor, they manipulate, right?
Yeah.
Like you start typing in, just say vaccine or something, and all you'll get is why vaccines are good, why Dr. Fauci's vaccine is the best, right? They're not showing you the actual results. And it's hard to find a search engine that does. I've used the Brave search engine, and it seems to be decent. There's still some things that it doesn't index the entire web like Google, but that's probably for the best.
I like Brave. And then there's also pre-search is good.
Pre-search?
Pre-search is good, but I like Brave the best. Brave is a pretty good search engine.
All right. Well, I mean, this has been.
So if I can say one more thing about the privacy action plan today, because we did talk about a lot of stuff today, but it might be overwhelming, even what I went through today. And again, that's what we try to go through. And like when we talk about password managers, I just threw out there that I like Bitwarden, but in the course, we take you through that over a probably 2.5 week period, because there's a lot to know about password managers, so that you do it right, and you do it in a way that you don't get overwhelmed also. But you have to do it right. If you're going to do a password manager, you have to do it right. And so that's why we do this type of things. And I don't know if you want it. We never talked about this beforehand, but if you want to give your listeners a coupon, I could do a coupon code.
Heck yeah, man. Let's give them a coupon.
So let's just do a coupon that's just, let's say Henry.
Okay.
And we'll give people 30% off if they want to join.
It's actually, I mean, it's not the cheapest service in the world, so 30% is a pretty good deal. So yeah, if you're listening, I guess you go to privacyactionplan.com, and would that just be a coupon code at checkout, Henry?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And I believe you also have a Substack.
Yes. So Glenn with 2 N's.substack.com, and that is not privacy oriented. That is more my freedom message.
Well, I think people are interested in both. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I think it's been really enlightening. Any last thoughts you want to leave people with?
Well, I hope people, I guess what I want to say is, people talk a lot about freedom, and it is super important to talk about freedom, but I think it's important to talk about privacy in relation to freedom too. And that's what a lot of people don't do that. And I think it's important that we start adding that to the mix of the conversation.
To view privacy as an essential component of freedom.
Exactly. Yeah.
100% agree. Glenn, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Henry.
Hey, I hope you got as much from that episode as I did. If you want to take control of your online privacy with Glenn's program, go to privacyactionplan.com. Use the code Henry at checkout. You'll save 30%. It's not a cheap program, but it's a lot cheaper than getting hacked or scammed, or, giving up total control of your information to the government. Also, if you like this kind of content, it would really help me out if you rate it on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. That really helps me get a lot more reach. And of course, share it with anybody you think would find it valuable. All right, that's what I got for you this week. I hope you found it as valuable as I did, and I'll see you back here next Friday. Till then, stay free.